guys, so for about a year now I've been working on a book which is all about fitness and training. I would say it's a manual of sorts. So the training manual has an exercise library. It has extensive knowledge of programming, and programming is basically how you make your own workout like plan, and then how you can change that like on the fly, how you want to change it depending on what your goals are. So it has all that knowledge, and it has 18 sample plans included and more. So if you're interested, leave a comment below. Tim, as a child, he was never told that it was his fault. It was because his parents wanted to protect him in a way. They wanted him to maintain his innocence. They didn't want to see him cry. They wanted to see him happy. And that was pretty much their primary goal and wish. But over time, it became something else. Because after his parents died, he blamed everything else. He blamed other people. Things were never his fault. It was other things, other people, other events. It was always not him. He was never at fault. It was always something else. And because that he was always blaming other people, because it was this person's fault for doing so and so to me, well, I can't do anything because it's his fault. Like, it's his fault, so his responsibility. So I can't do anything. I just had to wait till he does something about it. It's never my fault. There were times when he got drunk, he blamed the bar for being cheap. There were times when he got laid off, he blamed his coworkers, his boss. When his friends left him, he blamed them for being terrible people. And it was only one day that Tim met an old man on the street. And Tim was drunk at the time, but he would vividly remember the words the man said to him. So as they first talked, Tim basically poured out his entire life story, like, my parents died, I got a job, and I got laid off. And then a couple years after that, my friends kind of left me. So he told the old man this. And the old man listened with intent. The old man looked into Tim's eyes. The old man nodded. The old man asked questions to Tim. Like, can you please elaborate on this part? Like, how did that make you feel? Like, the old man listened until Tim had nothing left to sing. And after Tim finished, there was a long period of silence. Until it was broken. The old man said to him, "What you see as things that happen to you, I see as opportunities. Yes, they are things that happen to you, but it doesn't have to be that way. I see the despair in your eyes, that you cannot be more than what you currently are, that you don't believe that you can become more. But I see a man who has survived. Not gracefully, no. But a man who has still survived. I see a man who needs some help to get better. I see a man who can rise up once more. I see a man who can change, and will become better." And Tim replied, "How could you know such possible things?" The old man told him with a smile on his face, "I'm a seer. I already knew everything that you told me, and what your future entails." And Tim, being a rational person, was like, "Yeah, right. No, I don't believe you at all." And yet, after they were separated, he began finding himself stepping into success, weirdly, time and time again. One day, one of his friends reached out, they connected, and they were reunited. Another day, Tim got another job, and it was much better than his last one. Another day, he got a girlfriend. And all these things added up. And as they began to add up, he was reminded of the old man, of what he said. And so years passed, and Tim was walking into a park, and he saw the old man on a park bench. The old man was smiling and looking at him, and Tim replied the smile. As Tim walked closer, the old man asked him, "Well, how is your fate?" And Tim replied, "I still don't believe you're a seer." The old man laughed and said, "Of course I'm not." "You thought I was? I just told you what you needed to hear, so that you could stand back up, so that you could change. And that's exactly what you did." In this story, I want to illustrate that your beliefs dictate what you can or cannot do, who you are and who you are not. Because Tim learned that things were never his fault, he was robbed of the chance to change. He was robbed of the chance to do anything about his circumstances, because it was never his fault. And if it's never his fault, he doesn't have responsibility to it. He can't do anything about it, because you can't change someone else. It was after an epiphany that Tim had, where he realized that I could influence things. I could change things. It's my fate. I get to decide. And it was after that that Tim began to get better. It was after that that Tim began to, kind of cliche, but seize his destiny. He saw what he could do to change circumstances. Instead of blaming others or blaming external factors, he looked inward. And this ties into what the main point that I want to get across is. It's about loci of control. With an external locus of control, you are focused on the external factors. It's a worldview that everything is someone else's fault. It's not my fault. And because it's not my fault, I can't change anything. And Tim had this mindset until it was after he turned inward and had an internal locus of control, where the thought is, I can do something about this. I can change things. Things that are connected to me in the world are my responsibility. The problem with having external locus of control is that you blame others for things that are happening to you, and because of that, you don't have the power to change anything, and so therefore it just repeats over and over again. So something happens to you, you believe you don't have the power to change that, and therefore it keeps happening to you, because you don't ever choose to stop it. You leave the stopping power to someone else. Someone who may not even notice, most likely has not even noticed anything is wrong. And so over time you grow more frustrated and more frustrated until you explode. And maybe that solves things, but more than often it doesn't. Because Tim started getting an internal locus of control, he focused on what he could do. He focused on how he could get better. And because of this, Tim became more talented, more valued, more respected. And eventually he became the things that he once thought that he couldn't become.